And now, a message from Off Book. Last week, we promised you that the next episode was going to be about
the complicated world of remakes and reboots.
You may have noticed that this episode is not about remakes and reboots. You see, the schedule got a little bit confused, and so instead, we're bringing you the first episode of a brand new series called Off Book Extras. More on that in a moment. To make matters even more confusing, next week's episode will also not be on remakes and reboots, but instead on theme parks and what makes them successful. And then, after all of that, you'll finally get your episode on remakes and reboots. Time is confusing. And now, on with the show. Well, hey, howdy, hey. Welcome to the very first episode of Off Book Extras. It's time to sit down and take out your earbuds and turn up the volume because this is vacation, it's Off Book Extras. I'm still sitting at my desk, but that's okay because this is Off Book Extras. It's a show that's also about Broadway movies, TV shows, and so many other nerdy things, but it'll be a little bit shorter, a little bit more off the cuff because today I'm by myself and there's no one that can stop me from just rambling into a microphone. So that's what I'll be doing today, because today's Off Book Extras episode is all about the writing of Lin-Manuel Miranda and what his next musical might be. Lin-Manuel Miranda is on record saying that he's kind of always writing something, but specifically over the summer and over the quarantine, he told a reporter that he is working on another Broadway musical. And he said that he was kind of in that early stage where he's writing it, but he thinks he's going to end up going back once he's started writing it and he's figured out what the message of it's all about. Because, In the Heights is about family and Hamilton's about legacy and how what you do with your life and stuff. And so once he figures out what it's like actually about, then he'll go back and rewrite it. But he is working on something. He also said that he didn't really want to tell anyone what it was about because with Hamilton, everyone kind of knew all of it. And so it had this very public conception, whereas this time he wants to keep it very secret. But that's exactly why I am going to theorize. Now, do I think that any of these will be right? No. Do I think that the musical I create will be good? No. But, maybe it'll be an entertaining episode, I hope. So to start off, I guess, Lin-Manuel Miranda has had two musicals on Broadway that he has kind of done everything for, In the Heights and Hamilton. He's done work for Bring It On, and he's done other mediums like 21 Jump Street, but in terms of Broadway musicals, he has In the Heights and Hamilton. And In the Heights is a very small story. It's the story of a couple blocks in New York City going through like a week. The big Act 1 finale is the power goes out on the block. There's also a movie adaptation that's pretty good. But that's a very small story that Lin-Manuel Miranda managed to make feel big. He really brought you into that world and let you feel things from their point of view. Whereas Hamilton is a very big story. It's all about the founding of a country and wars, and the Act 1 finale is a bunch of people moving, and Hamilton gets a new job working for the new government, and, trying to balance his work life and his personal life, and they just became a country, and there were deaths, and there were just a huge story that he now has to try to find a way to make personal. He has to lay you into these stories that otherwise seem so sweeping, grand, and impersonal, and make feel personal. And so I think that really what he's good at is making a story resonate, whether it's a small story or a big story, but making it kind of feel in that middle ground where it feels like it has weight, but it also still feels very personal and small in a way because he finds those characters that can kind of let you in. In the Heights, there are very few characters, but Hamilton had so many characters he had to keep double casting. And so I think he's managed to create that scale of different kinds of size stories. And so I think his next musical would probably also be on that larger scale because it manages to get more people interested. The founding of a brand new country is a little bit more of a good elevator pitch than a couple days in a city. Both of them are good stories, but in terms of what is going to get somebody to be interested, I think when you go with the bigger story, it sounds more exciting, whether or not it actually is. And so I think it's going to be a little bit more of a bigger story. And In the Heights is set in modern day. Hamilton is set in the past, so I think his next musical should be set in the future. So it's going to be set in the future, It's going to be a big story. He's good at revolution, so I'm thinking maybe some sort of dystopian musical could be good, which sounds dumb, but it also sounds dumb to tell the founding of a country through hip-hop. So I think his next musical is going to be a musical set in the future. It's a dystopian story. Of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda is going to play the lead, but like Hamilton, it's going to be kind of an ensemble show. Because, Hamilton, I think, was the lead in Hamilton, but Eliza Hamilton, her arc was kind of the end of her arc was the end of the story, and he's also on record saying that Nina is the main character of In the Heights, not Usnavi. Usnavi is more the narrator, so I think he gives himself a prominent role, but not necessarily the backbone of the story. So you probably want to give the lead, the backbone of the story, to another performer who is good at this kind of thing. And I think that if you look in his catalog for people that he trusts to take the lead on things, that he needs to have a strong lead. I think you'll find Anthony Ramos. Anthony Ramos played John Lawrence and Philip Hamilton in Hamilton, and also played Usnavi in the Heights movie adaptation. And I think this would be a great chance for him to get the actual lead in a Broadway musical. And because I think it's funny, I want him to play Lin-Manuel Miranda's dad, because he played his son in Hamilton. Now, I think that he's actually younger than Lin-Manuel Miranda, but that's okay, because, he played a 9-year-old in Hamilton, so age is kind of relative in Broadway. Another key player that we need is Christopher Jackson. Christopher Jackson's appeared in pretty much everything that has been penned by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and so I think that he needs to be something. And I think it would be funny if he were the head of the robot army, because he was the head of the American army in Hamilton, and he was the good guy, and we all kind of looked up to him, and he found a way to let you in to a character you wouldn't otherwise necessarily sympathize with. And I think he could do the same thing here. Maybe he plays the robot that, at the end of Act 1, he has this One Last Time-esque story song where he realizes that he needs to be good, and so he breaks out of his programming, and that's how you can start to see the friendship between Lin-Manuel Miranda and Christopher Jackson, and you can start to see this kind of sympathy that Christopher Jackson's so good at getting. But it would be a nice twist on the kind of really good characters, really, really fun, nice characters, or maybe not so nice in terms of what Washington does sometimes, but you're still rooting for him, and I think it'd be interesting, and I think he could totally do it, to start with a character that you really don't like, and then let you into that more personal thing, and it would make a great song, and I'm sure that it would be really good. I don't have time to go through every single plot point, so I'm not going to. But of course, it would be told through hip-hop, and it would have 2 acts. The big act and the finale would be much like non-stop as all these plot lines come through. I think it'd be a nice way to tie back to Les Mis, because that was what inspired a young Lin-Manuel Miranda. And so I think it'd be nice to kind of tell a story similar to that, with a kind of similar One Day More-esque vibe in the finale, albeit kind of infused with that hip-hop style that he's so commonly known for. On the directing team would have to, of course, be Tommy Kail directing, because he's just so good at interpreting that creative writing vision and turning it into stuff, physical, tangible, seeable things. You obviously have to have Alex Lacamoire come back to orchestrate, because he's so good at finding that sound that melds so well with the lyrics, but also manages to encapsulate the sound, because he did it in The Heights and Hamilton, which both sound so different, but work just as well with their respective musical styles. So that could be a really cool thing for him to do. Of course, you have to get Andy Blankenmueller back to choreograph the way that he's able to evoke a certain mood with the choreography and tell of a certain story, and the visual style is so good. Some of that My Shot-esque choreography could look really cool. Maybe you could even do some stylized battles in this, this dystopian landscape thing. And I think it's interesting because In the Heights is named after the place that it set in, and Hamilton is named after its main character. And so, of course, then with this musical, you have to name it after the time period. You have who, you have where. So I think you could do what, but I think calling a musical what it is could work. But I think it'd be a little bit cooler named after the time period. So I'm thinking we call it, the future. It's because In the Heights was 3 words, Hamilton was 1 word, so this has to be 2 words. So, yes, I'm thinking Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical, The Future, starring him, and Anthony Ramos as the main character and his dad. And then Christopher Jackson is the head of the army robot things. You have the big act from the finale. You have the small finale that's more like, it's like Who Lives Who Dies Who Tells Your Story, but then a little bit of that kind of triumphant end of the finale of In the Heights, where you start to see a little bit of a better future because no one, is going to end up dead in this musical because I don't feel like crying again. But there's a lot of stories you can tell there with family, with legacy again, I suppose, with kind of who you can be versus what society expects you to be. There are a lot of lessons you can learn here, and I think that it would be a nice little story for him, and he could do a really good job with it. It could be you can check a lot of boxes for him. So that's some of my ideas about what his next musical might be. Again, do I think that he's going to do any of these? Probably not. Would it be good if he did? No, I doubt it. But, I think he probably would be able to figure out a way to make it work. I mean, it's him we're talking about. He can probably make it interesting. But I don't really expect him to, nor do I think he should, because I'm sure he has a much better idea in that brain of his, and we'll see it eventually, maybe. Anyway, that's all for this week. Next week, like I said, is going to be an episode in the normal series all about theme parks. It'll be much more researched and much more, prepared. Not like this. This is only going to happen every so often. A little bit of variance in your YouTube feed. So, yeah, that's all. Join us next week, and until then, it'll be now.